Hello. If you were looking for a scare tonight, you've come to the right place. I'll be narrating an hour's worth of creepy horror stories that I found off of Reddit. So without further ado,
These are their stories.
I haven't seen my grandma in 3 years. My mom and I moved across the country after the divorce, and we didn't have the money for a plane ticket. At least, that's what my mom claims. I think it's just because she hates my grandma. Well, funny how her attitude magically changed when her boyfriend presented her with plane tickets to Costa Rica. Ava, your grandma's so much fun. She'll teach you how to knit. She'll teach you how to bake butterscotch cookies. She's the best. She did warn me about something though. Her mind has gotten bad, my mom told me. She has trouble remembering things, recognizing people. Is she gonna be okay? Yeah, but just be patient with her, okay? And if she seems really out of it, call Mrs. Dempsey down the street. I put her number in your phone. Okay. But you're going to have a great time, my mom said, plastering on a smile. It's going to be wonderful. 2 days later, I was getting off at Pittsburgh Airport. Funny how my mom said I was too young to go to the diner alone with Shireen. The world is dangerous for a 13-year-old girl, her words. But she had no problem sending me off on a plane alone. My grandma wasn't great with cell phones. She didn't pick up when I called, but as soon as I got to the pickup line, I saw her silver Subaru out back at the curb. Grandma stood beside it smiling widely. Grandma, I said, running up to her. She didn't open her arms to hug me. She just stood there looking down at me. Grandma. Hello, dear, she said after a pause, as if just noticing me for the first time now. How have you been? I'm so happy to see you. Then she opened the car door and gestured me inside. The car smelled like old person smell. I'm sorry that's mean, but it's true. I crinkled my nose as I pulled on my seatbelt, and she drove us back through the city, out into the Pennsylvania countryside. Get comfortable, dear, Grandma said as she led me inside. The house looked the same as it always did, a little stale, a little outdated, but also oddly comforting compared to the minimalistic style of my mom's house. I glanced at the needlepoint hanging in the foyer of a large pitcher of lemonade. Make yourself at home. You can eat anything you find in the fridge or the pantry, she told me. Oh, except I almost forgot. I do have one rule. The basement is off limits. Why? It's a little dangerous down there, dear. Wouldn't want you getting hurt. I frowned. The basement had never been off limits before. It was finished on one side, and she had a bunch of board games and a sofa down there. I liked hanging out down there. It was the only place that didn't smell like old people. It wasn't dangerous before, I protested. Well, it is now, she said in a significantly firmer tone. Then her smile went right back on, and she asked me, would you like some butterscotch cookies? Yes, please. My mom was right. Grandma was kind of fun. I helped her with the cookies and she told me she'd send me home with the recipe. I did some reading and talked to my friend Shireen on the phone. Then it was bedtime. Tall and thin, Grandma looked like a ghost as she paced down the dark hallway to her bedroom. Night night, she said, poking her head out and giving me a wave. Good night, Grandma. Her blue eyes glinted in the darkness. Then the door snicked shut. I fell asleep quickly, despite the bed that was a little too soft and the loud cricket outside my window. I woke up with a start, however, and looked at my phone to see it was almost 2 a.m. My throat was parched, so I headed out to the hall bathroom to get some water. As I walked across the hallway, I noticed Grandma's bedroom door was open. And as I looked harder, what the hell, Grandma was sitting on her bed in her nightgown, staring out into the hallway, head tilted slightly, blue eyes glinting in the darkness. I stopped in my tracks. Grandma, was she smiling? Grandma. Ava, is that you? She called out. No, she wasn't smiling. At least not anymore. Yeah, it's me, I replied, my voice wavering. Why are you up? I thought I heard something, she replied, so I was just sitting here to make sure it was nothing. I got my water, feeling unsettled. When I got out of the bathroom, Grandma was poking her head out of the doorway again, waving. Night night, good night. The next day when I asked her about it, she didn't even seem to remember the interaction. I don't remember being up, she said, looking at me. In the sunny light filtering through the window, she looked much less scary. White hair tied back with a silver barrette, pale wrinkled skin, tired blue eyes. You saw me up? Yes, I said firmly. Huh. She rose from the seat, still in her nightgown, and shuffled towards the stove. Would you like pancakes this morning, Allison? My heart sank. Allison was my mom's name. Ava, I corrected, following her into the kitchen. Right, of course, Ava. She shook her head. You're just a spitting image of her when she was your age. The dark eyebrows and the curly hair. She shook her head again. It's like going back in time. She made the pancakes in silence, the tines of the fork hitting the bowl. Another egg egg glooping in, cracked eggshell set by the counter, a sharp sizzle as the viscous batter hit the cast iron pan. I have chocolate chips I can add, she said, riffling through the counter. Oh wait, these expired a year ago. It's fine, I told her. After breakfast, I thought maybe we'd play a game of Go Fish like old times, or take a walk, but Grandma had other plans. I'm afraid I'm feeling rather tired, she told me. Is it okay if I go rest and you just hang out here? That's fine. I brought my Switch, I told her. Video games. Oh, okay, that's nice. Well, get me if you need anything, okay? I nodded. I found myself surprised that I was disappointed. I thought I didn't miss all those things we used to do, boring things like playing cards or walking, but I did, whatever. I'm here for a whole week, I told myself, going up to my room. I booted up my Switch and started playing Pokemon. A few hours went by. When I got hungry, I went back down to the kitchen, but Grandma still wasn't around. I hope she's okay, I thought. I poked around the fridge and found some leftover chicken dated 2 days ago. I popped it in the microwave and sat down to eat. I'd only been eating a few minutes when I heard it, a scuffing sound coming from the basement. I got off the couch and walked towards the basement door. She told me not to go down there. What was down there then? Rats? An illegal, exotic pet? Yeah, right. The scuffing sounds continued. I pressed my ear to the door, and then I heard it. Help me. Spoken in my grandma's voice. Every muscle in my body froze. She must have gotten trapped down there. Maybe she fell down the stairs. That's why I haven't seen her for hours. I undid the deadbolt and swung the door open. Grandma, I called. The lights were off, but from what little I could see, it didn't look like she was lying at the bottom of the stairs. Thank God. Grandma, I called again, louder this time. Help me. Hands grabbed me from behind and yanked me forcefully back. The door slammed in my face. Then my grandma was in my face, her eyes wild. I told you not to go in the basement, she shrieked, so loudly my ears rang. I heard you down there, I said, my voice trembling. No, you didn't, she snapped back, her face twisted in this awful, vicious expression of anger I'd never seen before. I'm right here. I was upstairs lying down when I heard you calling for me. There is no one down there. But I heard you, I said, tears starting to prickle my eyes. She just shook her head and walked away. For the rest of the day, Grandma sat in the living room knitting. Every time I passed by the basement door, her eyes followed me. I started to feel incredibly uncomfortable. When I went up to my bedroom to talk to Shireen, I could hear her footsteps outside my door. She was trying to be as quiet as possible. Her footsteps were slow and light, but I still heard them. When I came down for dinner, Grandma was all smiles. She served me a dish of warm lasagna, cheese melty and gooey on top, smelling of garlic and onion. Thanks, I said. It felt like she was trying to make amends for yelling at me, but when I sat down to eat it, she just stared at me. Aren't you going to have some? I asked, hovering the first bite next to my mouth. No, it doesn't fit my diet. This is just for you, Allison, she replied. Ava, I snapped back. I set the fork down. This was feeling like all kinds of weird. I stared at my grandma's face, a chill going down my spine. Her blue eyes were so intense, so cold. She seemed so different from 3 years ago. What kind of cake did you make me for my 9th birthday? I asked, and she tilted her head, staring intently. I don't remember, dear. You spent all day on that cake. Of course you remember. Her mouth became a thin line. She paused. I don't remember. What's my birthday then? I pressed. She blinked. It's October, isn't it? September 14th. I'm sorry, dear, she finally said, breaking eye contact. I don't remember things as well as I used to, and I mix up names and words. It's not because I don't love you. I stared at her, and then I forced a fake smile. I know, Grandma, I love you. Then I got up from the table and started up the stairs. You haven't finished your lasagna, dear? Grandma's voice came from the bottom of the stairs. I'm not hungry, I called back. I hadn't taken a single bite. I think my grandma's a skinwalker, I whispered into the phone. Shireen gasped on the other end. What? She doesn't remember anything about me. I think she's keeping my real grandma locked away down in the basement. Oh, what? I heard her voice, calling for help. A heavy sigh. Shireen was not the superstitious type. Are you sure you heard her voice from the basement? Yes. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna go down there, I replied, tonight. Maybe you should just wait for your mom to get back. My grandma could be dead by then. Maybe you should call the police. What if my grandma tells them I'm a liar, that I made it all up? Are they going to believe her or a 13-year-old girl? I still think you shouldn't go down there. Well, I'm gonna... Okay, well, give me your address or something. If you don't call me back, I'll call the police. Good idea. I gave her my address. She tried to talk me out of it for another 10 minutes, and then I hung up. Then I swung the door open and crept out into the hallway. Silence. Darkness under Grandma's or not Grandma's door. I was safe. I tiptoed down the stairs and walked over to the basement door. Then I waited for a few minutes to make sure not Grandma wasn't following me. Silence. I slowly, quietly slid the deadbolt. Then I swung the door open, creaking slightly on its hinges. I winced, hoping that didn't wake her up. No scuffing sounds, no voice calling for help. Maybe she's already... I swallowed the thought and started down the stairs. The light didn't seem to work, but I had my phone with me. The flashlight illuminated each step beneath me. I slowly made my way down. When my feet hit the cold concrete bottom, I swung the light around. All the blood drained out of my face. Sitting on the floor, chained to a support pole, was my grandma. Her head hung limply in front of her, white curls hanging over her face. Grandma, I called, my throat tightening. I hope she isn't already... Grandma lifted her head. The phone fell out of my hands. Her face. There was something horribly wrong with her face. Pure white eyes, a wide smile full of pointed teeth, skin that seemed to slough off her face in patches, revealing bone beneath. No. A horrible cracking sound filled the air. I watched in horror as the thing transformed, bones twisted and contorted. The face opened its mouth in a silent scream, and then I was staring at myself chained to the post, white eyes fading to match my brown ones. It cocked its head. Hello, it said in a voice that matched my own. I let out a scream, and then Grandma, real Grandma from upstairs, not this horrible thing, was grabbing me and shoving me up the stairs. The door slammed shut and I found myself on the floor, panting, looking up at her. What did I tell you? Don't go in the basement. What, Grandma? I choked out. She double-checked the door was locked, then led me to the kitchen. That thing showed up a year ago, she told me, as she pulled out my leftover, now congealed piece of lasagna from the fridge. She draped a thin blanket over my shoulders and sat down across from me. At first, it took the appearance of an old friend of mine. I let it in, I fed it. Not just food, she said, glancing down at the lasagna in front of me, still uneaten. It started eating my memories. How? I don't know how, but I found myself forgetting simple things, names, dates, birthdays, and then one day I woke up to the thing looking just like me. I don't think it was aware that I would not respond well to a person looking exactly like me. I tricked it into the basement by pretending to relive a memory of the basement being a very important place over and over again. It eventually ate that memory and went down there. I locked it in. With the help of someone I met online, someone who believed me, I was able to chain it to the post, and I'm keeping it there so it can't hurt anyone else. I stared at her. If you knew you had this dangerous thing in your basement, why did you let me stay here? I missed you and I foolishly thought you'd listen to me. Scuffling sounds came from beneath us, and then I heard my own voice reverberating through the floor. Help me, get back down here and help me. Will it eat my memories too? I whispered. A number, it needs physical contact for that. Our talk was interrupted by 3 short knocks on the door, and that's when I realized I never called Shireen back, and couldn't because my phone was at the bottom of the basement stairs, down there with it. I'll take care of this, I told her, getting up from the kitchen table. Thankfully, the police bought my tail, and because I didn't let them in, didn't hear the clone of me screaming the basement. Then I used Grandma's old computer to send Shireen an email. There's still the matter of the thing in the basement, of course, but that's another problem for another day. For now, I'm going to eat some lasagna and then go straight to bed. And Mom was right, my grandma is fun. My girlfriend and I are seasoned hikers. We've tackled everything from rugged mountain trails to swampy, mosquito-infested paths, and we've always made it out unscathed. But this time was different. This time, the trail almost didn't let us go. It started with a warning. I know, that sounds over the top, but it's true. The guy at the ranger station, a wiry, middle-aged man with a leathery face, looked up from his clipboard as we signed in. You two sticking to the main trail? He sounded like he must have smoked 4 packs a day for the last decade. Planning on taking the loop trail up to the summit, I replied, we've been looking into it for a while and we think the weather's right for it this weekend. We've never been through Barak Park before, but we've heard it's beautiful. My girlfriend curled her arm through mine and rested her cheek on my shoulder. It's going to be great. I think he might have something special planned for us. I didn't. My smile turned nervous. The ranger hesitated, his pen hovering over the paper. Could he tell I didn't have a ring? Was he about to out me? Number. He braced a hand on the counter and leaned forward. eyes serious beneath bushy eyebrows. Stick to the marked paths, and if you hear anything strange like a kid crying, you keep walking. Don't stop, don't look, just keep going. What? My girlfriend gave a nervous laugh. Don't want you to get lost. The ranger's eyes didn't waver. People go looking for what they shouldn't, and not all of them come back. We decided it was just some backwoods superstition to spook tourists. What else could it be? So after we brushed off the nerves, we shouldered our packs and started up the trail. The first few hours were uneventful, just the two of us surrounded by towering pines, the crunch of dirt and leaves underfoot, and the occasional bird call. If you've ever been on a hike before, well, there you go. Standard day. My girlfriend kept looking over at me, eyes gone to honey. I didn't know why she thought this was a special proposal trip. It wasn't until we parked I even realized that's where her expectations were set, and my attention, yeah, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do to cushion the blow when we hit summit. Then we heard it, a child's voice crying. We stopped dead in our tracks. Amber froze, her eyes wide. Do you hear that? I nodded, my stomach twisting into knots. It sounded like a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Help me, she was calling out, her voice breaking with sobs. Please help me, mommy, daddy. Her voice grew quiet with fear. Anyone? Hello, are you okay? I called, my voice bouncing off the trees. The crying stopped. For a moment the forest was silent, too silent. No wind, no birds, nothing. Then the crying started again, louder this time, closer. We need to check it out, Amber said, already stepping off the trail. She waved her arms to the side to keep her balance as she made her way down the incline. Every instinct I had screamed at me to stop her. The ranger said, "Screw what the ranger said," she snapped. If it was your kid out there, wouldn't you want someone to help? She had a point. Against my better judgment, I followed her down the incline and into the trees. The crying led us deeper into the woods. Help me, someone, please. She sounded frantic, but the further we went, the more I noticed something was off. The voice wasn't changing direction. Normally, if someone's lost, their voice shifts as they move or turn their head. But this sound, it was static, like it was coming from a fixed point. The ranger's warning came back to mind. My steps started to slow down. Amber, I think we should go back. Something's not right. I can't find you, please, I'm scared. The kid was sobbing now. Stop acting like a jerk, Amber snapped. She's gotta be right ahead of us. Amber was right. 20 more feet and we saw her. She was sitting on a fallen log, her back to us, wearing a dirty pink jacket and clutching her knees to her chest. Hey sweetie, Amber called gently, stepping closer. Are you lost? Where are your parents? The girl didn't answer. She just kept crying, her shoulders shaking with each sob. Please help me. Amber crouched down, reaching out to touch her shoulder. Wait, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Something about this felt wrong. Why was she just sitting there? When Amber had called for her, why hadn't she tried to find us? Amber, we should just go get the ranger, come on. The girl's crying stopped. In one smooth, jerky motion, she turned to face us. Her eyes weren't right. They were too large, too dark, reflecting the light like an animal's. You found me. Her mouth stretched wide into a grin that split her face unnaturally, revealing rows of sharp, needle-like teeth. I knew you would. I knew if I called for you, you would find me. Then her skin, her entire skin, began to split down the middle like a zipper. I don't know what I was expecting to see underneath, but it wasn't this. It wasn't the sinewy, raw-looking creature that crawled out of its human shell like a spider shedding its exoskeleton. Amber screamed, stumbling backward. I grabbed her arm, yanking her to her feet, shouting, "Run," so loudly it made my throat sting. We bolted, crashing through the underbrush, branches whipping at our faces. Behind us, I heard the creature give a low, guttural growl, followed by the unmistakable sound of something running, fast. It was chasing us. We hit the incline, then the trail, and didn't stop running until we burst back into the ranger station, gasping for air. The ranger looked up from his desk, his face grim. You heard it, didn't you? We nodded, too shaken to speak. He sighed, getting up and locking the door. You're lucky you ran, most people don't. We didn't ask what he meant, we didn't want to know. We've hiked dozens of trails since that day, but we've never gone back to that forest. And if we ever hear crying in the woods again, we'll keep walking. So, I've lived in the same town all my life. I've never really been one of those people that wants to see the world. Not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just not my jam. I'm very content with my simple little life in a town of only about 6,000 people. The internet, more specifically Wi-Fi accessibility, hadn't quite reached us until a decade or so ago, and even then most were too poor to afford any kind of setup. Now, we're not backwards, incest-ridden savages or anything. I assume mostly everyone who's still here is pretty much like me, just happy with with their small life, like Mrs. Weller. She's a widow just down the road from where I live, and she's well known for taking in animals that need a second chance. She's got the acreage and know-how, as she's the only one around here that we could call a vet. Actually, she's the reason I'm writing this today. I've recently realized that some of the things that go on around here aren't exactly normal. You live somewhere long enough, and even if the status quo for us wasn't at all similar to how others live, we wouldn't really know. The closest town is separated from us by miles and miles of farmland, about a 45-minute drive, but we've got the dollar store, a small grocery place, gas station, and post office. So why would we ever have a reason to go poking around elsewhere, right? Despite having limited access to the internet at best, we all had a radio. We needed one, really. At least once a week we'd be informed about some kind of danger, I guess. To us it was the same kind of warning as the typical "there's been a crash on blah 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 highway, so plan your route accordingly." Anyway, sorry I got to rambling. I'll get on to the good part, I suppose. A couple nights ago I had the radio on, just like my mama had always told me to do, when the familiar sound of an incoming PSA roused me from sleep. See, we were taught to always keep some kind of radio going, whether it was in the truck, at the dinner table, or while we slept. The little box on the bedside table started to sing out the alarm we'd all come to be familiar with, not dissimilar to a tornado warning on TV. After about 10 seconds of this, the male announcer began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a PSA for county residents. Mrs. Weller has informed local police that a horse has chewed through the fence and escaped. Please, if you see this animal, stay far away and call 911 to report your sighting. If you begin to hear voices or have thoughts that are not your own, turn away and run. If you begin to feel faint or nauseous while looking at the animal, turn away and run. If the animal makes eye contact with you or begins to walk in your direction, turn away and run. If you cannot see any horse-like animal but begin to feel a heavy pressure on your chest, enter your vehicle or run home as quickly as possible. If you are inside your home at this moment, remain there until an update has been broadcasted notifying the capture of this animal. Lastly, remember that horses do not speak." Now, I hadn't been too worried about the announcement at the time since I was already in bed. Even though it's a small town, most of us usually lock our doors at night anyway. I regarded it the same way I do just about every time the PSA tones come across the radio. I made a mental note to keep an ear out for the all okay broadcast and drifted back to sleep, only a little bit concerned with the dull pain growing in my chest. I woke just fine in the morning. When I sat at the kitchen table, a thought started creeping up on me. I'd been so tired when the PSA called out last night, but as the grumble of the coffee maker softly filled the silence, I really took a moment to analyze the words. Well, of course horses don't speak. Everyone knows that, I thought. Even though our town, probably even our county, was indefinitely weird, I'd be confident in saying that all the residents are firmly rooted to reality. We know the announcements are strange, but after generations of tribal knowledge they kinda just fell into the background. Come to think of it, I really couldn't remember hearing about anyone around here leaving for a different life. I filled my cup, deciding that I'd run by the gas and munch for an egg sandwich so I could sit and talk with the other farmers while I finished breakfast. I got into the truck. The door latch is a little sticky, so I had to slam it loudly a few times before it shut. The sky was still dark, and the air was chilly and humid in the morning hours. I kept my handheld radio on the center console, as the radio in this old truck had stopped chugging years ago when that family of three-headed squirrels made a nest in my wiring harness that I was never able to fully fix. Not the only time I had to deal with those crafty little things either. Last winter, they nested up in the attic with insulation and old "Crap," I said to the dark truck cab as I slammed on the brakes. The horse. God, I completely forgot. There had been no accompanying broadcast announcing the capture of the horse. A small pang of fear settled in my chest, not quite blooming into full-on panic yet as I started the 5-point turn it would take to turn around on the 2-lane I'd been on. This control was short-lived though, just as my truck became completely perpendicular with the road. My headlights illuminated the last thing I wanted to see, standing in the half-grown soybean field in front of me. It definitely did not look like a horse. The neck was about twice as long as it should have been. Shredded and necrotic flesh clung to its emaciated form. The mane was frizzy and rat-nested, but the worst part was the sheer size of the thing. My best guess for breed was thoroughbred, but the thing still stood around 21 hands tall just at the shoulders. For those who don't know, 21 hands is about 7 feet tall. I'd like to say I kept my cool. That years of living in what's most likely the weirdest place ever has hardened me into into a farm boy tough enough to scoff at unnatural horrors like this one, but I totally didn't. No, I slammed the gas and spun the tires fast enough to complete my U-turn and only skip into the ditch for about a foot or two. For only a moment I had hoped that the horse would just keep being creepy in its creepy little spot on the side of this creepy little road, but of course it didn't. As soon as the truck started moving again, the horse began to run towards me. I felt the truck shake as it leapt into the bed and started pounding its rotting hooves on the top of the cab. My frantic mind only had one idea as I backtracked down the road. After all, Mrs. Weller was only a few miles down from me. I turned on the unpaved road, wheels spinning and sliding on loose gravel as I continued pushing the pedal so hard I was worried it'd break through the rusty floor panels. I could hear crunching glass as the horse nipped on my back windows. Voices screamed in my head all the while. "You should drive into the ditch. Look, there's a telephone pole, take your chance." I did my best to tune it all out, but the exaggerated thudding in my chest was accentuated by an immense pressure. It felt like someone was stacking bricks on my chest. I turned down the next road, and now it was a straight shot to Mrs. Weller's farm. Suddenly, the ear-splitting sounds of tearing metal and shattering glass faded away. In the moment, fear blinded my senses. Muscle memory was the only thing guiding me towards my destination. The lights at the end of her driveway flickered and fought with my headlights. Still hauling ass, I slid the corner into Mrs. Weller's driveway, and the truck lifted a couple inches with the release of weight off of the suspension. Just out of the corner of my eye, I saw the brown flash of an impossibly large, impossibly fast horse running towards the back pasture. I took a breath and steadied myself to back out onto the road when the radio crackled loudly to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a PSA for county residents. Mrs. Weller's horse has been returned to her property and it is now safe to leave your homes. We hope you have a good day. God bless." I jumped at a sudden tap on the glass to my left. Sweet Mrs. Weller stood with a grateful smile and a steaming cup of coffee to replace what had spilled out of my travel mug, which was now rolling around on the passenger floorboards of the truck. I know this town is weird and maybe even horrifying, but at the end of the day, I knew my neighbors would be around to lend a helping hand when needed. I drove back down the road on my way to a warm egg sandwich with a travel mug full of steaming coffee, still feeling content with my simple little life. My son's furious screams echoed through the mall as I dragged him toward the clothing store, his feet kicking out in defiance with every step. People were staring as if I were the worst mother, but was too tired to care. His small fists pounded the air, his face flushed with frustration. "I don't want new clothes," he yelled. His shoes scuffed the polished floor as I dragged him forward. I muttered promises of ice cream, hoping to bribe him into submission. "Can we get mint chip ice cream?" he asked as he began to calm. As my son grudgingly stepped into the fitting room, I finally exhaled, hoping for a moment's peace. I glanced at my phone, scrolling through messages. As I waited, relieved at the short moment of peace while he tried on the clothes. Minutes passed and I barely noticed. When I finally looked up, the fitting room was eerily quiet. I called his name but got no answer. Panic set in as I hurried over to the door, knocking gently. I swung the door open and was stunned to find it empty. The pile of clothes lay untouched on the floor. Where could he have disappeared so quickly? I thought to myself. As I searched around the store, panic turned to absolute dread when I realized there was no sign of him anywhere. The worst thoughts were running through my mind as I screamed his name. People looked at me dumbfounded when I asked them if they had seen my son. When I begged the security guards to check the CCTV, they brought me to the mall's control room. I watched closely at the screens as they scanned through the camera's feeds. When I spotted my son walking out of the store, the security guards were as stunned as I was when the person walking off with my son looked exactly like me. They even drove off in the car I drove to the store in. The police wanted to confirm I wasn't crazy when they suggested they drive me to my address, but when I spotted my car back in the driveway, I felt like I was going completely insane. The two police officers looked at each other when my house key didn't fit in the door lock. "Are you sure this is your address, ma'am?" "My husband will clarify for you who I am," I shouted as I banged down the door. When my husband came to the door, he looked at me as if I were a complete stranger. "Someone kidnapped our..." Suddenly, my son ran out and jumped up into my husband's arms. I was relieved he was home safe, but when the woman I saw on security feed came to the door, I wasn't sure what to believe. "This woman is an imposter," I protested. "I am that boy's mother. Tell them, Sam." "I've never seen this woman in my life, officer. As you can see, emergency. My wife is here with me and my boy." The police said the handcuffs were for my own safety as they were putting me in the back of the police car. There was no evidence to suggest I wasn't who I was saying I was, so the police had no reason to keep me once we got back to the police station. Although I promised the police I wouldn't go back to the house, I had no choice. It was my house after all. It felt like I had my identity stolen. There was even a moment where I doubted who I was, but I wasn't crazy and I knew who I was. I sat outside the house, heart pounding, trying to make sense of the madness. I knew I had to confront them. I gathered my nerve and walked to the door, pounding on it until my husband opened the door. The frustrated and cold expression on my husband's face as my son clung to his leg shattered my soul. "Sam, please, you have to listen to me," I begged. "That woman is an imposter. She's pretending to be me. I don't know how, but you know me. You have to know me." The woman appeared behind him and stood calm and collected. She rested a hand on Sam's shoulder and looked at me with pity in her eyes. "I think you should leave before things get worse for you," she said softly, as if speaking to a lost child. My son stared up at me with a confused look on his face. "Mommy?" he asked, unsure, glancing between us. My heart broke as I crouched down to his level. "Sweetie, it's me," I whispered, tears welling up. "I'm your mom. Remember our favorite bedtime stories? We went to the mall today. You were upset about getting clothes and we were going to get mint chip ice cream afterward." His face scrunched up in confusion, but before he could say anything, the woman stepped forward. "Honey, we already had mint chip ice cream at home, remember?" she said, kneeling down next to my son. Sam pulled my son close, his eyes narrowing at me. "I don't know what you're trying to pull," he said coldly, "but this is my wife and our son. Please leave us alone." I waited down the street out of sight, keeping my eyes fixed on the house. My mind raced with everything that had happened, and I felt trapped in some twisted nightmare. Hours passed before I saw Sam leave with our son, heading off in his car. I got out of the car and cautiously approached the house as my heart pounded in my chest. As I neared the door, it suddenly opened, and there she was, stepping out onto the porch like she owned the place. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking with both rage and fear. "What do you want with my family?" She just smirked, tilting her head slightly. "You're not supposed to be here," she said calmly, as if I were the intruder in my own life. "That's my life inside. You can't just take it," I snapped, stepping closer. Her smile didn't falter. "I already have," she whispered. "You should leave. You don't belong here anymore." I stood frozen as the rage built inside me. As soon as her smug words hit me, something inside snapped. Without thinking, I lunged forward and shoved the imposter into the house. She stumbled back, eyes wide in surprise, before quickly regaining her balance. I rushed in after her, but before I could get another word out, she struck. Her fist slammed into my stomach, knocking the wind out of me. I gasped, doubling over in pain. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. I tried to fight back, but she was terrifyingly strong. She grabbed me by the collar and threw me against the wall, the impact sending shockwaves through my body. Dazed, I scrambled to my feet. My only thought now was survival. She lunged for me again, but I dodged her grasp and ran toward the stairs. I could hear her footsteps pounding behind me, getting closer. My heart raced as I sprinted up the stairs, desperate to get away. But just as I reached the top, she grabbed my ankle, pulling me backward. I kicked out wildly, and in one desperate move, I twisted and shoved her as hard as I could. She toppled backward, tumbling down the stairs. I heard the sickening crack as her neck snapped at the bottom and her body twisted unnaturally. For a moment there was silence, and I caught my breath, thinking it was over. But then, to my horror, her body twitched. Her head jerked to the side with a grinding noise, and sparks flickered from her neck. She began to rise slowly, her movements stiff and mechanical. Pieces of her skin peeled away, revealing metal and wires. She wasn't human, she was a robot. Her eyes flickered and a distorted voice emerged. "I just wanted to be perfect. Isn't that what you always wanted?" Suddenly, the light in her eyes flickered and slowly dimmed before she fell to the floor. The front door creaked open and I froze at the top of the stairs. My heart was pounding as Sam stepped into the house with our son. His smile faded instantly when he saw the mangled android at the bottom of the stairs, sparks flickering from its broken neck. His expression changed from shock to something dark. He slowly set our son down before telling him to wait in the car. As the boy ran outside, Sam's gaze focused back to me, his eyes narrowing in a way I'd never seen before. "You weren't supposed to find out like this," he muttered, his voice eerily calm as he approached the stairs. I thought I had more time to perfect her. I backed away as dread crept up my spine as the weight of his words began sinking in. Sam, what is this? What did you do? He didn't answer immediately, his eyes drifting toward the broken android. You always wondered what I did at work, didn't you? I've been working on this for years. Lifelike androids, advanced robotics. She was supposed to be perfect. The perfect wife, the perfect mother, no flaws, no doubts. His voice became bitter as his gaze locked onto mine. Unlike you. I took a step back, my mind racing. I knew Sam worked for a robotics company, but I had no idea how close he was to creating something so real, something meant to replace me. You were going to replace me, I whispered, my voice trembling. Not replace, he said, a twisted smile creeping across his face as he took another step closer. Improve. She was everything you're not. She didn't argue. She didn't fight me. She was obedient, loving, and everything you refused to be. Panic surged through me as he edged closer, his demeanor growing more threatening with every step. Sam, you can't seriously believe this, I said as the words struggled to get out of my mouth. You try to build a family. He chuckled darkly, his eyes gleaming with something unhinged. I did more than try. I succeeded. My heart pounded in my chest, but all I could think about now was getting out and getting my son and running as far away as possible. I bolted for the door, adrenaline kicking in. You're not taking my son, he shouted. I slammed the door behind me, sprinting for the car, grabbing my boy before Sam could reach us. I booked me and Daniel into a hotel until I figured out what we were going to do next. My heart was still racing from the chaos we just escaped from. The room was quiet, a stark contrast to the horror that had unfolded at the house. For a moment I allowed myself to breathe, to feel some relief. We were safe, away from Sam and his twisted creation. Let's get you cleaned up, buddy, I said softly, trying to keep things normal for Daniel. He smiled up at me, innocent and unaware of the nightmare we just fled. I filled the tub with warm water and helped him in, watching as he relaxed, splashing happily. For the first time all day, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I sat on the edge of the tub, running my hand through his hair, grateful that we'd made it out together. But then something strange happened. Daniel's movements grew stiff and jerky. He stopped splashing and his head tilted to the side in an unnatural way. My heart dropped. Mommy, I don't feel good, he said, his voice distorted. Water fizzled around him and I saw tiny, almost invisible sparks at first coming from his neck. No, I whispered, backing away in horror. His skin began to peel, revealing metal and wires underneath. Sam hadn't just built the perfect wife, he was trying to build the perfect family. There was a story about it in the paper. People at church offered their condolences. Kids at school that I never talked to would give me sideways glances. When a 5-year-old gets washed into a cave and there is a 2-week search, it tends to get attention. I never wanted condolences. I wanted closure. Even if he was dead, I needed to see his body. The thought that he could have died down there, alone and in the dark, was unacceptable to me. When they stopped searching after 2 weeks, my only thought was that it would take someone longer than that to starve to death. There was plenty of water down there. If he had been washed into an inaccessible part of the cave, then he could still be alive. My dad had to physically keep me from trying to go back into the cave myself, to tell me that it was over, that he was gone. In my heart, I didn't believe he was dead. I was 16 at the time, a junior in high school. Kieran had been an oops baby. 11 years younger than me, he was the sweetest kid, even though he was insane. At age 4, he'd broken a leg and an arm falling about 30 feet out of a tree he had managed to climb. He was always running around climbing and jumping off of things, yelling and laughing. He probably had ADH in retrospect, but at the time he annoyed the heck out of me. I would try to do homework and he would basically whirlwind into my room like the Tasmanian devil from the cartoons, jumping on the bed and tackling me. He wanted a big brother, but the age gap made it hard for us to bond. Any of my spare time after marching band and homework was spent trying, unsuccessfully, to get a girlfriend, and I didn't treat him the way I should have. 2 years later, after a lot of therapy, I've stopped blaming myself as much. I know that it was natural to act the way I did, to feel the way I did, that even if he annoyed me, it didn't mean I didn't love him deeply. I know that I did. I know that I still do. When I went to UT for college, I met a couple people who were into spelunking. They didn't know about my brother and I never told them. I couldn't bring myself to tell my parents, knowing what they would think, but I picked it up fast, with a conviction that I knew was illogical. I wanted to find his body or find him. him. It was denial, I knew that much, but I had nightmares about him, nightmares that he was in that cave, in the dark screaming my name, but I couldn't find him. After nearly 3 years, they never stopped. My therapist had a whole bunch of thoughts on the matter, as did my parents, but I knew what would give me peace, in a way that nothing else could, finding his body. Partway through my freshman year, an opportunity presented itself. Kieran had fallen into a creek that went underground. Since then, we had had record drought and the creek was nearly dry. More than 2 years before, the team had explored everything they could, but the path of the water was not navigable. It was a tunnel completely filled with a fast current, too dangerous to try and send anyone down even with scuba gear. I needed to see what it looks like now. I should have told someone I was doing it, even just my friends that taught me caving. Instead, I drove back to my parents' neighborhood, took a dirt road into the forest, parked my car, and went back to the cave. For anyone not from that part of the country, it's all limestone. Water eats through it easily, and there are caves everywhere. Most of them aren't as deep as this particular, but it's normal if you have a few acres of land to have a cave on it. This particular one was in a gully a couple hundred yards from the house I grew up in. Getting my gear out of the trunk, I walked through the familiar hickory and maples, feet crunching on the dry leaves, down the rocky hill to the creek. The mouth of the cave was small, only about 2 feet high and 3 feet wide. I could still picture the yellow tape, the police officers directing volunteer search parties day and night. Standing there in the quiet forest, I stared at that black opening as I had so many times. Even though the cave was significant, they'd already explored everything they could, mapped it thoroughly. The water didn't even go over the top of the rocks in the bottom of it as I crawled through without getting wet, besides a little mud. I had the cave maps they made memorized, but still carried a laminated copy. Following the weak trickle of water, I crawled a little ways until the ceiling got high enough to walk if you kept your head down. All I had to do was follow the water about 100 feet, then see if the tunnel was clear. That was the only way his body could be. It smelled earthy, with decaying leaves in the weak flow. Looking back over my shoulder, I turned a bend and saw the last bit of reflected sunlight fade out of existence, leaving only my headlamp. Watching my step on the slick, muddy rock, a little salamander wriggled out of the way through the silty water. My heart was pounding in my chest as I made my way deeper into the earth, seeing how little water there was. Every inch of the cave had been checked, except for where I was headed. If the passage was clear, I would be the first person to ever go into that part of the cave. Well, the second. The black hole was shaped like an oval, a little over a foot tall and about 2 feet wide. 1 to 2 inches of water ran down the bottom of it. A knot formed in my throat, half feeling like I would cry and half feeling like I was scared. I knew that I should get someone else, but I couldn't stand thinking about what they would say. They would say there was no point, that the body would be washed too deep or buried, and that it could be too dangerous, and to let a professional do it. Instead of getting help, I began to drill. The rock was all limestone, and it didn't take too long to get 2 secure bolts drilled to anchor my rope. I put on my harness and got onto my stomach. It's hard to tell just how steep slopes are in a cave, but the water gave me a good idea. I would be squeezing through this hole and essentially rappelling down. Looking in with my headlamp, it seemed like the top was a narrow point and that it might open up. I'd never done anything this tight and steep with water in it, but something pushed me into that black opening, where I could hear water falling far below. Night after night of dreaming, Kieran was down there alone, screaming, terrified. It was a tight squeeze, tighter than I liked. To rappel, I had to have my face down toward the water and turn my head so that I could breathe. I inched down, struggling to use the equipment in the tight space. Progress was painfully slow, as I had to try and turn myself onto my left hip to reach the ATC scraping into the rock on my stomach. Getting out wouldn't be any easier. The rock pressed in on me harder and harder as the angle got steeper and steeper. I was essentially in a tiny tube with a waterfall, going more and more vertical. My problem was that the tube was not equally wide in all places. It was carved by water and would get narrower or wider on whims that I couldn't predict. I'd heard horror stories of Nutty Putty Cave, where the cavern got stuck in a vertical shaft like this one, and it didn't help. I was coming up on the narrowest part yet, but it looked like it would open up below that. I'd taken my helmet off so that I could squeeze through better. In the tight space with the water splashing my face and running through my shirt and pants, I began to feel fear. Not fear like you feel standing near a ledge. That's a manageable type of fear you can step back from. Not a fear that you feel in the pitch black, unsure of what's around you, you can just find a light. This was a fear beyond that. A fear that each foot of vertical rock builds incrementally inside of you as you know your escape becomes harder and harder. A fear that each pound of pressure as the rock rock smashes into your chest so that you can't breathe increases. A fear that right here, right now, if you panic, you will die. I promised myself that my parents wouldn't lose 2 sons to this cave, that if it got any tighter, any steeper, I would turn around. Just before my will broke, my chest scraped through a tight spot, and the tunnel began to open. I almost dropped my helmet down the shaft, but managed to put it back on. From the sound of the water falling, I could tell I was entering a large chamber. Shining my light around, there was a domed ceiling with a few small stalactites. A huge murky pool of water was below me, and I couldn't see how deep it was. Large rocks were piled around the edges, and it seemed like the water was shallower on the other side. I rappelled down until my feet hit the water. They just kept going down and down until I was chest deep and stopped feeding rope. There was no way to know how deep the pool was, but I knew I would have to swim. The rope was my lifeline, and I couldn't leave it. I did an awkward side stroke, pulling with one arm and trying to feed out rope with the other underwater. I'd never tried it before, and I wouldn't recommend it. It sort of felt like I was going to drown, the weight of my clothes and shoes and the rope making it nearly impossible. Eventually, I made it 30 or so feet away from the waterfall, and felt my boots start to sink into silty mud. Drenched and breathing hard, I found a rock to sit on. I felt as if I might throw up from the exertion, now that the adrenaline was wearing off. A new sort of dread filled me as I looked around. This wasn't a small cave system, and I could hear the water going even deeper. I couldn't be sure, but it looked like there were other tunnels made by other water sources meeting up with this one. Should I follow the main current, as that was likely where Kieran's body would have gone, or should I try to thoroughly map every tunnel I could find, branching off of this chamber? The memory of his loss was fresh in my mind, but it had been almost 3 years. What would I be looking for? What would be left of his body? Scraps of clothing or bones? Regardless of what my dreams told me, what else could there be? I had decided to take a few minutes to rest, to gather my thoughts. Rushing things wouldn't help. The sound of water was a white noise, and I began to look around more calmly. I noticed a pale little fish swimming in the murky pool in front of me. All I can remember was a loud cracking sound. Thank God I was wearing my helmet, or I would have been dead. It's strange how when you get hit on the head, you can lose your sight and sense of balance, but still hear things. I was shocked, but knew that I must have a concussion. There's no way for me to know if I was unconscious for a second or a minute, but I tried to scramble back to my feet in a panic. A rock had struck me from above. It must have come off of the steep side of the chamber, from a hidden ledge. My leg was hurt, I could tell that much. There was a sharp pulsing pain on my calf that I'd never felt. It was bad. I kicked my leg by reflex, only realizing consciously what my instincts had already figured out, only seeing the impossible as my dazed head turned around, and a scream escaped my mouth. He was eating me. The emaciated boy was pale as death, bloody teeth digging into my leg. Blind eyes were wide open, deep in their sockets above sunken cheeks. Over and over he bit me, with a hunger I could never understand. His arms were smaller than my wrists, his collarbone sticking from his chest. I grabbed his shoulder and threw him off of me in terror. He couldn't have weighed 30 pounds. For a second I saw him stand, my blood dripping from his mouth and over the ribs of his chest, before he ran into the darkness. Kieran. I screamed his name at the top of my lungs, went to chase him. Still confused from the head trauma, I was yanked backwards by the rope still attached to my harness. I frantically unlocked the carabiner and ran the way he had gone, ignoring the pain in my leg. Drops of black blood lead me to a low narrow tunnel. In my headlamp, I saw his little feet disappearing around a corner. The crack he had squeezed through was impossibly small, I could never fit into it. Kieran, it's me, it's Chris, it's me. I began sobbing. Why couldn't I have grabbed him? If I just grabbed one of those tiny arms, I could have hugged him, told him I loved him, brought him back to the sun. Mom and Dad love you, they miss you, I miss you. I yelled over the sound of the waterfall. I kept saying anything I could think of. I said that I had food, tried to wrinkle the wrapper of a granola bar as loudly as I could, told him that he could go home, screamed until I collapsed on the wet rock. In my mind, the last almost 3 years had been hard. What were they for him, alone in the dark, eating anything that swam or crawled he could get his hands on? He was only 5 at the time and would be almost 8 now. Would he be insane? Remember who I was, or even who he himself was? Looking down, a trickle of blood went into the main pool, dyeing it a dark color at the edge. I was bleeding a lot. If I didn't stop it, I wouldn't make the climb back up, and no one would know that either of us was down here. Wrapping the leg as tightly as I could, it kept bleeding. I didn't really have the tools tools to make a proper tourniquet, but tightened the knot as hard as I could until I screamed. Before I went, I left the granola bar unwrapped at the base of the crack Kieran had gone through, along with a spare headlamp turned onto the lowest setting. I screamed that I would be back, promised him, before eventually turning back to the pool. I pulled myself along the rope to the base of the waterfall. Painfully, I made my way back up it, and somehow squeezed through the crack. I barely remember, to be honest, just the suffering of it and wanting to give up. I didn't give up though, half for myself and half for Kieran. At the mouth of the cave, I collapsed. Seeing the sun brought me to my senses just a little. I called my mom and she answered. I told her I was at the cave out back, that I was hurt, that I had found Kieran. I told her to call an ambulance. The leg is okay, I will be able to use it just fine, even though the scar will never heal. There was too much tissue missing. At the hospital, the doctors agreed that the injury on my leg was from being bitten, probably by a child based on the tooth marks. That fact alone was the only reason I could convince anyone that he was still down there, still alive. It seemed impossible, but he must have been eating the fish, or anything else he could find. They sent down a search party, but no one can fit into a lot of the tunnels he might have gone down. My parents are a wreck, understandably. Even 3 days later, my dad is hysterical and my mom is just quiet. They wanted to go down to try and talk to him, but there's no way they would make the climb. I barely did. The rescue teams couldn't find him, and the tunnel is completely impassable to anyone other than a starved child. No one has seen him, but they put food in the crack I last saw him in, and when they came back the next day, it was gone. I never gave up on him, and I still haven't. Right now, the plan is to leave as much food as we can, and hope that the rain forecast tomorrow isn't enough to fill the cave. My friends won't believe me, my family thinks I'm crazy, and if I keep trying to convince them, they're probably just going to lock me up. But I need help, and I think that strangers online are my last hope, so I'm begging. If you meet me, if you see me walking down the street and I say hello, if you meet me in a bar and feel inclined to buy me a drink, or if you match with me on a dating app and make plans, kill me. End it. I don't care how it's done. I'd prefer it to be as painful as possible, but I know that's probably a lot to ask. It's already a lot to ask someone who doesn't know me to commit murder on my behalf, and I'm sorry to put such a burden on you, but I truly can't do this any longer. Let me provide you with some context. I might have gotten ahead of myself, but I came on too strong. Don't leave yet, please. At least let me explain to you what's been going on. Maybe, hopefully, once you hear this, you'll be on my side. Maybe you'll believe me. Hell, maybe you've experienced this too. I can't be the only one who has experienced this. It started 2 months ago at Meech's. Meech's is a small bar that my friends and I used to go to every Friday night. They had a karaoke night and everyone got free nachos with the purchase of a drink. It was a routine we had been sticking to for almost a year now, ever since Melly moved into the apartment complex down the street and found the place. Anyway, it was a Friday night, probably around 10 p.m. because I remember that Jonas had just arrived and he got off his shift at the hospital at 9 on those days. Melly and I had just performed a tipsy version of Fleetwood Mac's Rhiannon, and we were giggling and stumbling back to our booth when he intercepted our path. He said his name was Tony, short for Antonio. He said he was new in the city and had just moved here from Idaho or Iowa, I don't really remember. He wanted to talk to me, he said I had a nice voice, and he enjoyed my performance and he would like to get to know me a bit better. I agreed because he was my type, dark hair, green eyes, stubble on his jawline. He smelled like Tide laundry detergent and something else that reminded me of my childhood friend Istra's house. It felt familiar to me, and so I followed him to a booth near my friends and we talked for the entire night. Our first date was dinner and a movie, a classic first date. We watched Heart Eyes, which he loved, but I said wasn't my style. We went to this expensive French restaurant after, a small place that was almost an hour away, and we had wine and 8-hour dinner while a woman sat in the corner of the room and sang La Vie en Rose. It was romantic, he was romantic, it was a great date. The first bad sign didn't feel like a bad sign when it happened. You know what they say about hindsight? It started with him going by his full name instead of Tony. He said he had always gone by Tony because he preferred it. He thought Antonio was a mouthful, that Tony made him sound like a fun, easygoing guy while Antonio made him sound like the opposite. And then, that day, he changed his mind. "You've never gone by Ella or Stell?" he asked me one evening as we were walking through a small street fair that the city put on every year. Nope, just Stella. I've always been completely Stella," I replied as I took a sip of my soda. "Really? You've never gone by a nickname? Not even as a child?" I shook my head no again. I remember this conversation vividly now. I had forgotten about it soon after it happened because it seemed irrelevant at the time, but as soon as I realized what was going on, it popped back into my mind like someone had dug into my subconscious and pulled it out, projecting it onto a big screen right in my face. After that, he decided he wanted to be Antonio. He wanted to be completely Antonio. After that step was done, the rest came quicker and quicker, like an avalanche headed downhill until it spiraled out of control. He changed his hair, dyed it a lighter brown like mine. His eyes, which I swear to all of the gods were green when I met him, were now dark brown like mine. He got slimmer, losing his broad shoulders almost overnight. His face got rounder, softer, and less angular. He shrank 3 inches. Then he took my jokes, stole my bits, and started saying things that only I would say. Even my friends would comment on it, albeit in an innocent way. "Oh my god, that's such a Stella thing to say." "Aw, that's so cute. You guys are becoming like the same person." Ugh, I love when couples start to adapt each other's mannerisms. Except we weren't doing that. He was stealing all of my jokes. He was taking all of my catchphrases. He would use my references that he didn't even know previously. He stole my style, swapping out his Vans, jeans, and button-up shirts for thrifted boots and band tees. He got glasses even though he didn't need them, and he went vegetarian. The worst part about this, the part that pissed me off the most as this was taking place, was the fact that everyone acted like I was insane. They acted like he had always been like that. He never went by Tony. Stella, what are you talking about? His eyes were never green. I think you're misremembering. Maybe it was the lighting in the bar that night. He's always been the exact same height as you. It's impossible for someone to just shrink. It was such bull crap. It's making me mad all over again to think about it now. Nobody believed me. I tried showing them photos where you could clearly see the differences, and it was like they didn't notice them, like I was the only one who could see the photo as is. I need to calm down. I'm not finished telling you my story, and I worry about you getting bored. I need you to believe me. So, would you believe me when I tell you that about 2 weeks ago he became me? I mean, he literally became me. He morphed into a clone of me. He goes by my name, he wears my face, and hangs out with my friends. I almost had a heart attack when I saw it the first time. It was like I was looking in a mirror, a screwed up mirror who had taken over my life. My friends acted like nothing was wrong, like he had always looked like that. They didn't think we looked alike at all. They didn't think it was weird that we had the same name. Everything was just a big, fat, stupid coincidence to them. It's so infuriating it almost makes me laugh. So that's where we are now. He, or I don't know, it can't be human, can it? Whatever it is has become me, and it's ruining my life. He picks up my medications, takes my esthetician appointments, takes my Pilates classes, hangs out with my family, everything. I need you to kill him. Me. Something needs to die, please. My name is Stella Kobe. I'm 5 feet 5 inches. Short brown hair, curly collarbone length, brown eyes, big glasses with thick red frames. I've got a tattoo of a skull on the inside of my right wrist, and a 4-inch long scar that runs down the back of my right arm, down my elbow. It's from when I fell off a horse as a child. I'm 156 pounds, and I'm a big fan of rock music, specifically Blondie. I love action movies, and I'm allergic to cinnamon. You might meet me out in public in the produce section of your local supermarket, maybe on Bumble or Hinge or Grindr. I'm in thrift stores a lot, maybe watch out for me there. You'll know it's not the real me because I haven't left my apartment in over a week, and I have no plans of doing so. I want that thing gone. I want it gone from this world before I ever step foot outside again. I don't know how it picks its victims, but it's quite charming. Just be careful. You can try to avoid it if you want, but your best bet is to just kill it and put an end to this thing. So please, if you meet it as me, please kill it.
If you enjoyed these stories, please consider subscribing and liking this video. Let me know your thoughts of these stories in the comments below. I frequently talk to my viewers there. But anyways, I hope you were creeped out.
Just kidding. Stay safe.